I think like going back to what you were saying earlier, keeps popping back up in my head is that if it was legalised and the risk was, I suppose, was taken out of the situation, would that have an impact
glorified as much?
Yeah, the way that we're hearing about it in songs and the way that it's being portrayed in TV shows. It's the fact that it's illegal.
There's an
and it's
element of the naughtiness of saying
exactly.
it, or doing it, or seeing it that really grabs the
appealing,
attention, and maybe why
be
the music industry.
But I think
TV.
it's kind of the same as like the way I see it is the English like culture and American culture are very different, so it's kind of hard to look at them as like a parallel in some respects. But I also think you think about alcohol and cigarettes in English media and rap and whatever, there is so much about excessive alcohol consumption. Speaking, you know, cigarettes is still a thing of like, you know, supermodels, you know, posting photos of cigarettes, and people are still, you know.
Or the candy ones, like little white candy ones. Yeah.
So like even the stuff that's been legalized, it's a bit hard to still get rid of that. Because like cigarettes are very legal and people still judge them because there's a societal stigma. So that hasn't really removed the issue with like, I don't know, people doing it purely because, you know, they feel bad about rebelling, you know.
Now for me, no matter what part of London I'm in as well, even outskirts of London, it is a common thing, especially on the weekend, that you will smell it, you know.
On the weekend, I smell it all the time where I live.
No, I'm just giving it, you know, most places will definitely be on the weekend, but like you say, all the time, everyday use, you know. And I know as a kid, I didn't know what it smelled like.
This is the
I know my
thing.
parents, they don't know what it smells like.
I didn't know
like,
what that smell was, but kids nowadays, especially living in London, they just know what you just.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not even like in parks or wherever. It's just walking down the street.
Yeah, and in desirable areas.
But you also see people.
I mean, I was at the pub in like an afternoon, evening type setting, maybe like 7 o'clock. Yeah. There was someone smoking weed within the pub garden, which was a bit crazy to me. You know, but it's very bold, you know, and nothing happened.
But you do see it. Like I see people smoking in the street all the time, and then like, where is it? I don't understand where people are not getting so fearful anymore.
Exactly. I was just thinking this because that's interesting, because imagine if somebody was like snorting a line of cocaine in the middle of the street, or, you know...
we live in London. I mean, I've seen worse things.
On like a Saturday afternoon on like Camden High Street or wherever you are, do you know what I mean? So openly, I think that would be... I wouldn't be surprised if I saw it, I'm not going to lie, but I would be more shocked. I would be like, oh my gosh, they're doing that, I saw drink really openly. Whereas if I smell someone smoking a joint now, I'm like, I don't.
I saw a tweet about someone talking about how like social contracts kind of broken in London right now, and they were talking about exactly this point that everywhere you go now, people are smoking weed wherever. Because I guess
I like that idea. The social construct. It's not just weed, is it? It's everything.
It's everything.
And then that's
like,
just spilling
smoking,
into it.
You know, cigarettes or drinking like excessively. Like you wouldn't before. Like you wouldn't really do that in front of a child or near a school, or like, do you know what I mean? There was hours you wouldn't do that. Whereas cost of living, whatever that's going on in the UK, like people, that's kind of gone, that social contract is just not there anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key things that people are now looking to do is, can I put the light on, or can I put food on the table, or do I go and buy some drugs? And that's one of the key things people are actually now wrestling with. Absolutely, in regards to dependency, where particular issues are either physical or either psychological dependency. The argument is, depending on any particular treatment that someone looks to maybe get some support from, is arguably more support around the physical dependency, because your body needs to have it to actually get through life. So you have your kind of functioning people that are dependent, although you have those who are psychological using, and how they can actually manage those particular challenges in regards to the cravings, the triggers to go and buy, as opposed to, okay, I've got enough food in the house, or it's bloody cold, it's -10, I've got to put heating on. So again, all those kind of things that people are trying to wrestle with in regards to prioritizing what's good for them.
Well, you could argue that it's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it is happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are smoking joints in front of your children already.
Yeah. People are going to have this conversation in schools from really, like, I didn't have the conversation about, no one taught me about weed in school, but I think that that's the kind of conversations like in primary school are going to have to start needing to be had, because again, like we just said, how do you explain what these smells are, or what's right and what's wrong? And no, you shouldn't be smoking the difference between a cigarette and a special cigarette and things like.
Especially in London. I mean, I feel like I can't really speak for anywhere else in the UK because obviously I live in London, but especially in London.
It's interesting
especially
as well
in
that
London.
obviously we're talking about how young like a child may need to be spoken about it. You know, on TikTok, when I watch social media videos, it's now referred to as broccoli sticks or long sticks. Broccoli sticks or long sticks. Broccoli is supposed to be a very positive thing. The fact that that now is being in association with weed to get past the banning, you know, because if they say weed or cannabis, they'll be,
shadow banned,
you know,
yeah.
But you do that, and it's a way around it, and then that's the problem, isn't it? Because then
People say like wacky backy, you know, wacky backy.
That's why I said the special cigarette. I don't know.
You know, it's gone even further.
That's scary though, because then people will just, it becomes normal for kids to be talking about weed, but in the form of broccoli. I don't know if I read this somewhere about them trying to not decriminalize it, but in London specifically, try new tactics where they weren't arresting people for it.
Oh, really?
I can't remember.
I mean, they're
reading about
clearly not
something.
afraid of that. They're doing it very openly. Like the people who are choosing to do this,
So I
it's
mean, do you
clearly
know
not
anyone?
something that they're
do they
worried
arrest people
about.
for smoking weed now? Obviously, there's a difference between smoking and selling weed, but I mean, if
Smoking,
you were
I've never seen or
anyone,
been,
just get arrested for it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, have you been to Carnival?
Oh, exactly. But this is the thing, going back to like,
Have you been Notting Hill Carnival?
where it's smoked. So I've been at indoor venues, indoor gigs, and there is always a smell of it. Towards the end of the gig, fair enough.
I went to Little Sims Ali Pali last year, and it was
stunk.
potent.
I mean, you get on the bus and you smell it. You get on the train and you smell it. Like,
But again, like they're clearly, the fear of the consequences clearly isn't there because
I mean, I don't know what the laws are
It's
in
happening.
Portugal and Spain, but I know that there you won't really find people getting arrested for. That's what I mean. They've lent
Spain you
a
can,
bit
right?
more
Smoke.
towards like legalizing it in some parts. But what I meant is on the topic of like getting arrested in the UK. What's kind of worked out there is that people aren't smoking weed as often in public areas because they know that like it's slightly more legal and it's less decriminalized. That's it.
okay, so
that's the word, yeah.
but I don't know if they've done it in London. I do know.
Oh no, I know, not in London. I meant like.
But I think they are trying something. I remember reading something about
Yeah.
trying it because my dad lives in Miami and they've done it there. They've decriminalized it in just Miami-Dade.
So what do you mean
Just
by
that one. So
that,
again,
like,
it confuses.
So you won't get arrested for it,
Confuses
kind
me.
of thing, if you're just smoking it the day.
But you're not allowed to. It's not legal.
Yeah.
It's still technically illegal, but they will not arrest you.
So
for
there's
it.
like things in the UK that are illegal, but you can still technically do, and they won't be like cuffing your hand behind your back kind of thing.
So I guess that's like the halfway point between something being legal.
Which
and
I
being
think is
illegal,
probably
isn't it? That's like the middle ground.
most realistic thing they could do, because I wholeheartedly believe that if they were to just fully legalize it, this country would just spiral. To be honest, because I think a lot of people aren't smoking weed for the right reasons.
What are the right reasons then? Are you just saying it's just for medicinal use only?
As in, I think recreational is not most of the case when people are smoking weed or doing most drugs. It's usually like drug abuse. It's just no one admits. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a lot more people that actually are abusing drugs than will care to admit
say that
to.
about alcohol. That do
100%.
people drink alcohol just for
100%.
one drink? No, they drink alcohol to get drunk and to be smashed.
But I mean, I've known people who, in terms of weed, will spend their whole day searching for weed. Like, when as a joke, we hid one of our friends, joints, and he went ballistic. Like, start throwing things around, like,
I think that's
very. Oh, that's what I mean. But like,
That's
a
when it
lot of
gets to a
people
problem.
won't admit that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think because of, again, the destigmatization, but like with alcohol, when people like alcohol abusing, they tend to, I think sometimes, maybe, because in terms of like mental health, I know like some people that I know have smoked a lot of weed and it has massively affected, I don't know, like their uni degree. Some people end up moving out of their house and completely throwing away their life. Like one of my friends, he moved out of his house, didn't go to college, so he's got no A levels or anything like that. Moved in with his girlfriend to basically smoke weed all day. And they broke up and obviously then realized, what am I doing in my life? But like he's thrown away like 3 or 4 years of his life. because he couldn't really admit he had a drug problem.
Objectively, I would say similar to what you were talking about the abusing of it. I think they're potentially, depending on the individual, is a level where it might help alleviate some of those symptoms of anxiety. But I think if you kind of cross that line,
yeah, I think just like jumping off that,
it sends you into that spiral, I suppose, doesn't it?
When we look at the actual content of the drug, it's actually a plant. And then the way that's actually being manufactured in regards to selling it, in regards to the community, is based in regards to it being in a laboratory. So today, for example, we have a lot of the skunk cannabis, which has high level of THC. That in itself is, in terms of giving it a high level of potency, is a spray. So THC is tetrahydrocannabinol oil, which is obviously the highest level of the potency, which makes it a very psychedelic drug. And that in itself can be very dangerous in regards to how it actually affects someone's brain. So the hypotheses around the dangers in regards to cannabis organically is that, for example, take a young person, where it's one of the most commonly formed drugs a young person would use, is around their, the growth of the brain biologically, organically. What this means in effect is that when the brain forms naturally, without any substances in it, the brain will actually into adulthood be okay, if you like. So there'll be no particular issues in terms of anything predetermined from any particular genetic or any societal influences. If someone's actually using cannabis or skunk cannabis at a young age, the brain then potentially forms abnormally. So therefore the shape of the brain actually comes out different than someone not using cannabis. That in itself, as a consequence, then can tend to lead to potential mental health problems, which could include psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar, and their alike. So those are the kind of key dangers that we need to look at going forward.
A lot of people actually enjoy the inhaling and exhaling sensation of a cigarette rather than the nicotine helping them.
It's like a little ritual.
You know what I mean? Exactly. It's kind of like something you do when, I don't know, bad day at work or customers annoys you. You go outside or, have a cigarette, which again could be said the same with cannabis. That some people will just after a bad day or something, or just to calm themselves down, will have, a bit of cannabis to help themselves.
Yeah, I think you can get to a point as well where you convince yourself that it's helping, even if it's not, like a bit of a placebo effect type thing. Like with cigarettes, like you were saying, there's no scientific evidence that they actually helps with stress. But if you tell yourself enough that when I'm stressed and I have a cigarette, it makes me feel better, eventually that will,
you convince yourself.
You convince yourself that that's the truth.
The social pressures and the social environment as well, that having a cigarette might calm you down because you might be outside having a bit of a fresh air. Or you might be
but also if every time you're stressed you have a cigarette, then it's going to become second nature. Like I'm stressed, so you won't even think about it. You'll be like, well, every
also,
time
if you're
I'm stressed, I have a cigarette. This is just what I do now.
And then you have something that gives you a rush, like nicotine or cannabis. Yeah. Of course you're going to think in your brain, stress, rush. Do you know what I mean? You're going to think that uptake is.
But then I think there is with cannabis, there definitely is studies, isn't there? That again, I'm not a scientist, but like there is studies that have shown that it does have that relaxation kind of effect. And I've got lots of friends that work in creative industry and media and maybe music, like into music and stuff like that, and they see it as a creative. It's like a way of almost helping them like creatively release.
Potential,
free from like the stress of like
and just open up, almost like open, like just actually relax and focus on what they need to. Some people I know use it to clean. People like all of a sudden they like really focus. It focuses them. So I don't think there's
that's like an interesting point, because obviously we've spoken a lot about people misusing the drug, but it'd be quite interesting, I don't know, if they have to legalize it, and with the medicinal use, there are some like personal medicinal uses people actually use weed for. With sleep, as you said, cleaning, creatively, anxiety, like that's not people misusing it to the point where like, it's antisocial behavior, but it's just their own personal like medical issues.
As well as productivity. Like I mentioned, like someone said, they help to clean, they help to get the day,
I think it's going to be done. Personal, isn't it? Like you said, you've got that, but then you've got the other extreme where you've just said, one of you just said that you had someone that didn't do anything.
I do think
it's always going to be down to the individual.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Same with alcohol, same with anything.
That's what I mean. Like, it's like, how did we go about as a society regulating that? Because I will admit, I can understand some people that, it does help with, sleep, productivity, etc. But I think it's quite hard to measure that because people weigh differently. They feel drugs differently. Like it's all these different things.
It's very much, again, a juxtaposition of different areas around that. So if you are, for example, depressed and you're sad and you smoke cannabis, it could actually arguably make you feel more depressed, or it could actually lighten your mood. One of the things that myself personally, I used to be involved in the music industry, and that drug is very widely used, and a lot of people use cannabis for creativity. So if you are feeling very down, feeling very depressed, and you want to get some inspiration to go and maybe write a song by having a joint, I know people actually go and do that, and they can make the most beautiful pieces of music. Again, vice versa, if someone's feeling great and they are on a great vibe and they're feeling going to smoke the cannabis, actually dour their mood and make them feel a bit down. Those that maybe have, for example, predisposition of mental health issues can actually trigger psychosis in regards to their behavior. And they can go, for example, doing some really not, I would say, positive social things, whereby they could then become antisocial and do things that could get them arrested or get them sectioned. So again, in regards to how cannabis affects people, whether their mood, where they are, who they're with, it's a multitude of different layers and answers. So it's not one size fits all.
I have more friends that have abused alcohol than I do that have abused weed, cannabis. I don't know if you guys
do you
have
not
similar...
think that's because alcohol's easier to access though?
No, not anymore. I don't think that's the case. Like we're saying, when we're seeing on the street and you smell it everywhere. Literally.
I mean, if you compare like going to Sainsbury's to get a bottle of vodka to like having to message a dealer to get weed, it is just...
But then outside Sainsbury's, you've probably got someone that's selling it outside Sainsbury's nowadays.
True.
Like,
but like
the average person.
The average
The
person.
average
I know what you
person
mean.
isn't going to be able to
like, we think
access
actually
it.
outside of London,
Yeah.
if I know, we're talking about Derbyshire, you know,
Big
Peak
up.
District, yeah. Yeah, you can pop to the big Tesco's to get a bottle of vodka. You probably wouldn't go to that Tesco's to get weed.
You say
it's
this,
like,
but I'm from up north as well, and I've grown up in, like, if I go home to visit my brothers in Chester, like, it's a very popular thing to smell, even in the nice areas. You've got the skateboarders, you've got the different, there's all different types of people that do. And I actually believe there's so much more middle class and upper class people that do it than is discussed, than people think. People assume and kind of put that drug with, like, working class. I think it's the other. I think there's a lot more.
But there's a reason why we all smell it a lot of the time. There's a reason why we smell it in desirable places, because it's not just the working class that is perceived to be doing it.
Yeah.
It is everybody.
Well, in terms of cannabis, again, because it is now becoming normalized, and I look at maybe, for example, the 7 degrees of separation, you'll always know someone who can know someone can get it for you. That's always going to be the possibility. The argument in regards to what is called the gateway theory is that people actually use cannabis, they can then go on to use other particular drugs, more harder drugs. So again, if you know someone that's maybe dealing a bit of coke, or someone dealing a bit of what they call a ticket to go and buy a bit of crack, you know somebody may be using cannabis as well, and vice versa. Someone using cannabis, you know someone that can deal a bit of smack and a bit of brown and a bit of white as well. So those are the kind of things that people can actually look at. Again, going back to the issue in regards to cannabis becoming normalized, it is something that I wouldn't say is easy as to go and buy alcohol in supermarkets, but it's something that people could actually get in good reach of, because someone knows someone that knows somebody that can get it for them.
So bringing it back to what I asked at the beginning, what do you actually think? Should it be legalized?
I still feel like I don't know whether I can give a definite yes or no answer. Very non-committal when it comes to these big questions.
But your personal opinion.
I think that there are obviously huge reasons that you could argue that it should be legalized. Obviously, what I was talking about earlier from my personal experience in terms of cancer prognosis, if it's working to help people who have terminal cancers live longer, then why on earth would you not want to make that more accessible to people? For me, there is no other argument than if this is working and if it's shrinking tumours and if it's extending life of people with terminal illnesses, then the only answer is yes, make that more accessible. Having said that, I do think you know, we've touched on a lot of it when we've just been chatting over the last half an hour or so, and we were talking about vapes and all of that kind of stuff. It is down to the individual when it comes to like recreational use, and there is always going to be people who use and abuse and who can't just dabble. And, you know, there are people who are going to use it sensibly, and it's going to improve their life, and it's going to improve their concentration and their sleep and all of the stuff that we talked about 100%. But you're always going to carry the risk with something like that, that it's going to spiral and that people are going to abuse it and it's going to destroy lives. I think you could argue that that's already happening with cigarettes and alcohol. So maybe as I'm talking, I feel like I'm convincing myself that my answer is yes. Yeah.
It sounds pretty like a yes.
I'm on board. Yeah. Sod it. Let's make it legal.
I do think it should be. And I personally think, to keep it quite top line, it is only a matter of time. For me.
Yeah.
I really do think that. Yeah.
Right?
I think there is, you know, and no one knows what's going to happen, and there is going to always be negatives of it. But I do think there is so much more leaning towards it being legalised. And obviously, I think we mentioned it earlier with how other countries have done it. And there has been positives. If it wasn't a good thing, or if it wasn't, you know, if it was solely negative, it would then be illegal again.
True. I think I'm not quite as far as you guys gone, but I believe in the medicinal. I get that 100%. I think it's hard. It is really hard, because I think it's not as easy as just being like, yes, you know, legalised, free willy, everyone's go for
as
it.
well, just even with us as well,
well,
it's all on our shared experiences and the experiences.
yeah.
Like you said, you know, a close friend of yours, you've seen the turmoil.
Major risks in regards to cannabis is one whereby a lot of young people and even adults could actually potentially abuse the drug. There's also issues in terms of some people not doing very well in regards to mental health, and also in terms of other issues in regards to depression, family issues, work, finances, and those type of everyday things that people actually go through in life. So the risks could be very, very high, similar to alcohol, whereby people can actually smoke cannabis, not go to work in the morning, have issues in terms of their employment, have issues in terms of their family dynamics, issues in terms of their friendships and peer networks. So if it's actually done in that particular way, it could actually be detrimental to society and to people individually. So those will be the kind of risks that we're looking at going forward if it is made legalised.
I would more lean towards decriminalisation, as I was mentioning earlier, in other countries where you won't get arrested from the street. However, I think obviously if you were running like, you know, Cruzado Blanco level operation, then I think, you know, they probably would arrest you. So I would lean towards that. I do think it's hard though, because with the whole like personal use, you know, you do have people who are functioning, and alcoholics functioning like they just on coke all the time. And it's, how do you regulate that? Because drug driving is a thing. I'm pretty sure if you smoke weed, you're not going to be a great driver. You know, like, how do you regulate someone who's...
Do they already do that? I feel like they already do drug testing when you drive, can't they? They can do that?
Yeah, but I meant in terms of like, you know, how there's like a legal limit of drinking. How would you measure a legal limit of weed? Because, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, how would you actually
If it was legal, you mean? And then like, how would you say how legal?
But that's her
You
whole
know-
change and reform.
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
But I mean, like that's for me on the personal uses, that's where I'm stuck, is because the personal amount, the same with alcohol, but I think there is a kind of more of a research, let's say, in terms of how much alcohol will affect a person. But I think for me, I wouldn't be happy if it was personal, and I don't know, your doctor could literally have had...
Well, I don't want to be getting in an Uber and my Uber driver is high.
Yeah. No, so it's like, it is a sticky one, I think. But
Yeah, I get that.
I do agree. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably better that our government gets ahead of it. They probably won't. But
If you get to a point where it's being legalised, though, all of that stuff will obviously be invested into and researched, as they have done with alcohol.
But I think this thing, it takes, like, reform takes time in terms of law, culture changes, money. So I think it's probably a lot better that, you know, the government does get ahead of it.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see that if it is legalised, the negatives that we have spoken about, like the media portrayal and everything, would that then tone itself down in turn?
I'd be interested to see the way that the country would almost market it into becoming like from a negative connotation to a positive, like it's legal? How would they market that across the rest of Britain? It's not just because we're talking like, I know we're in London and we are like, right now we're personally in London and we're kind of talking on our perceived, like our London experiences, but when we think it's the same when you think about things like Brexit and stuff like this, we all just assume, like lots of Londoners just assume the rest of the country would just have the similar experience, like idea, but it's not like that. So how would they? Yeah, I'd just be interested to see how the rest of the
I think it would be
the
like
whole country would really
a generational.
Because
A generational. You think about
change.
like people who get their opinions from Loose Women or BBC News, and it's like you think to yourself as a young person, like how do people think like this, and how do they want to leave the EU? And then you watch these shows, and you're like, that's why. That's how you know.
So it'd almost be like basically the country, we'd have to be indoctrinated.
I think it would have to be like our grandparents, our grandchildren, seeing the benefits of any kind of UK where you could just legally
just the way it's normal, and it's normal, not like
If we do have countries where it's legal and it's working for them, then surely we can use that in the UK as a framework for introducing it here.
I think we think of the UK as we're better than every other country. So because then I look in Portugal it works, but most British people would not put themselves on par with Portugal just because I think of our own.
It's a completely different way of living, isn't
exactly.
it? I know what
so
you mean.
I think it's hard to translate that data.
I guess so, but you've got to start somewhere, right?
Oh, 100%, yeah. But I meant I agree with you, but I think it'd take a lot more time than any of us realise.
Oh, I think it's going to take a long time, but I like your idea of they should get a move on it soon and basically.
Oh, it's always better to be ahead of, the issue. With vapes, they weren't ahead of it. So now it's such an issue.
I feel like with the UK, you might be asking for a little bit too much.
A little bit too much.
But maybe
we should get on top of stuff that's already happening and that's already screwed up before.
Maybe they're delaying it because they're not sure.
I think one of the key things about CBD is the actual therapeutic element of it that we're now seeing in around the world and also the UK. It does have its elements in regards to supporting particular situations with people having maybe ME, MS, multiple sclerosis, glaucoma. So we understand that there are some particular retail establishments that actually sell CBD as well in regards to its therapeutic abilities. There are also elements in regards to the finances of it as well, and also how it impacts in regards to government legislation, issues in terms of how it's impacting on people's well-being, people's health. So at the moment, it's still very much a kind of growth area. There's still a lot of research going around in regards to understanding its benefits. We have a lot of pharmaceutical companies looking to get involved in that as well. So at the moment, it's still very much a kind of growth area, and the research in itself is still very much in its infancy.
Like we just said, there's so much things that they would have to take into consideration when we were talking about the US and how you've got in one state, you'll have people in prison for cannabis possession. And in the next state, you can go into a coffee shop and buy it legally. Is it going to be the same here when you've got people in prison on cannabis charges, weed charges, they're in prison for that kind of thing. And then if they were to make it legal, it's not a simple process, is it? It's something that's have to be.
I mean, the thing with most laws is you can't. If it was illegal when you committed the offence, you couldn't really be acquitted on it if it became legal later. Just because that would kind of just mess with the whole legal system.
But again, that's something that they would have to really,
I think.
So that's why I agree.
More as well that we haven't even considered.
100%. That's why I think
crazy.
it's a generational thing, like you said. It's going to have to be phased out.
Like incremental changes.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, as we've been discussing, them inputting medicinal cannabis is a good start, to be honest.
Well, I think that says a lot, doesn't it? The fact that they technically legalized medicinal use.
Yeah.
I feel like it's only going to be a matter of time.
Yeah, it should be legal anyway. Yes, especially in this country, I know. Now, last week it's been legal in Germany, I heard. And I think that they're gonna same the same stuff that they are doing in Spain with the social club, cannabis social club. Anyway, everybody that using it. And so it should be better for the state, for the taxes and everything.
I think it's a good idea because you'll get a lot of this criminal activity going on, i.e. stabbings, drug wars, etc., etc. And the thing is, if you legalise it, I think it will there won't be much of a black market to then be caused by.
I think it would be a positive thing for a lot of people. I think the government could tax it very well, so it would benefit the system as well. And throughout that, they could bring the tax back to something sustainable, maybe education, through the taxation of the cannabis. So it will be profit on both sides.
I think it'd probably reduce crime overall in I think in London, especially, you walk down the street, you smell cannabis, very, very often. I think it's something which, to be honest, I don't have a major opinion on, but I think it's something which would reduce crime overall.